Amen.
Amen.
You join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first item on our log tonight will be log number 165, an ordinance 596 to provide for the lease of the Pickens County Performing Arts Center to JWPR Holdings, LLC, a South Carolina limited liability corporation, so as to provide for the continued operation of the said facility and for matters related thereto.
Ask a request, Council. I've got some guests here that have come up from Clemson. That are not part of staff or any of that kind of stuff. Is it possible to address item D first, so they don't have to sit through all the stuff we got some stuff that may take a while before we get there. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to try to do that before we start. Is that a possibility?
That's a motion, right?
Does anyone have an issue with?
Can I make that as a motion? Well, first off, is it okay with you to make that?
I don't have an issue with that at all.
I'll second it.
For the sake of, so motion second. Anybody have an issue with the motion to go to log item D first, or agenda item D first? No. All those in favor? We don't really vote in committee, but we can just for good measure. All right, unanimous. All right, so we'll start with item number D on the agenda, log number 162, an ordinance of the County Council of Pickens County, South Carolina, abandoning and relinquishing maintenance responsibilities to Clemson University for Old Route 28 road right-of-way located within the county, approximately 50 feet wide, adjacent to and is surrounded by the real property address as 105 Old Greenville Highway, Clemson, tax map, parcel number 4044-18-41-6810, real property address is 201 Sunset Avenue, Clemson, tax map, parcel number 4044-18-41-395, a portion of the Clemson University campus, tax map, parcel number 4053-00-30-0529, and a dike for Lake Hartwell maintained by the Army Corps of Engineers. I know we've had a lot of discussion over this over the years. Mr. Roper, I'm going to kick it off with you and let you kind of fill us in and catch us up.
Yeah, so you'll recall that I believe second reading was back before the holidays, and the council decided not to have second reading and instead to refer it to committee of the whole for further study. Quite frankly, I didn't reach back out to Clemson or anything because it was over the holidays and I wasn't to it yet. I had other things, and I didn't think the council was in a hurry, so to speak, to get to that. But Clemson reached back out here in the last couple of weeks inquiring about it. I told them that they sent it to committee. They provided the further information in front of, that you've got in front of you, which is just kind of a rehash of some of the background that's been laid out there. There's a couple of photos that really just show the current condition. I'll show you that. It's just, it's a stretch through the middle of that parking lot. The reason they tell me they keep bringing it back to us and asking is that a couple years ago they were wanting to do some improvements down there. And they applied to the state for some type of bond issuance, and this came up as a title defect. And so they keep trying to clear the title defect. But I know on second reading, y'all had some concerns about it. They've expressed their willingness to, as they've had from the beginning, quite frankly, pay us $5,000 for the right-of-way. But this is still something y'all would have to agree to. So all I told them is that I would bring it back to you gentlemen and see if you had any further questions or what the will of council was.
Mr. Chairman. So if this explains to me a little bit more about what happened the first time we went through this, because it went out and back between who owns what. We only, according to this letter, we only are doing the we took over the maintenance responsibilities for the road. So we don't own the road.
We own the right-of-way.
We own the right-of-way of the road. So we don't own any land on either side.
We don't own the, it's starting to sound like a lawyer, and I don't want to sound like a lawyer. We don't own the fee interest in the land underneath. We own the right to operate a road through there.
Okay.
So, I went back and, I talked about this several
That's
weeks
right.
ago.
That's right.
And honestly, I wish staff had shown some more curiosity. Did anyone from staff ever go out to the site?
I rode through it, but it's been back when it came up here before. I rode down there and went through, but I didn't see anything of any particular interest.
Well, I went by there last week and I found something of very peculiar interest. And it's interesting that the photo they show us of parking does not show what I saw.
Yeah.
But there are several of those up there. And I looked at their photo and I thought, okay, I see what's going on here. But then there are signs all along there that says parking for Esso Club. Tower violators will be towed at owner's expense. So I got my curiosity up. Why would that be there? So I went looking into the Esso Club to find out what was going on. And I bumped into the owner of that property who's here tonight. And there's a whole different story to this, that Clemson's not been feeding us. And I find it very interesting that Clemson is making statements to the point that they're all worried about security and maintenance, and even in the ordinance, which I'm kind of curious, did we write that ordinance?
No, we didn't actually. I told them that I didn't know when we would be able to get to it, so they wrote the ordinance. They did.
For us.
They did.
Isn't that
Yeah.
nice of them? Their lawyers worked this whole little package up for us to sign over to them, but they're claiming that they've been taking care of all this. And it's all about security and that kind of stuff, and I don't believe that's what it's about at all. There is a real question as who owns this property, okay? Now, Clemson is showing us some letters from 1962, and I believe the owner was gonna have a few words to say, but there's apparently some law before that property, when it was abandoned by the state, would go to the landowner adjacent. Now, our policy as a county, when we abandon a road, we give it to the adjacent landowner. That's been the policy of the county. Now, there's a question of whether we own this property or not. When the state abandons it, they abandon the maintenance of it. Does that mean they abandon the road? I mean, do they still say the state owns the road? Because it's an abandoned road, so if the county's taken over it, would the county not own that road?
We would own the right to have a road. I mean,
But it's not a road anymore. So anyway, there's a lot of legal questions which I think we need to get addressed. Clemson has kind of been going around who they should be talking to about this. So I'd like you to introduce yourself and say a few words, explain kind of what our conversation was the other day, enlighten us, because I'm just trying to figure out the bottom line of this thing.
Mr. Councilman Whitehurst, before you do that, our attorney is not present.
he is not, and we haven't done a title search on this property this go round. I mean, it's just come back up from Clemson's standpoint, and I had no reason to doubt anything they're telling me. So,
Okay, all right. I would love to hear.
Well,
What's your name?
my name's Harry Bottom.
So you own the property behind you?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr.
Hey,
Boniface.
Harry, for the purposes of the camera and all that, you want to go over to the microphone?
I do want to point out that it's usually very abnormal, but I'm very intrigued at what you want to hear. We don't typically have folks come and speak at the committee meetings, but I'm intrigued at what you have to share with us tonight.
Well, I feel honored. My family has lived at that residence since back in the 30s. I live there now. The dike was built in 1959. That extinguished the right-of-way of Highway 28, 76, and 123. Since that time, and all the years I can remember, Clemson University has never really expressed any interest in that right-of-way and has never really maintained it. Over the last 11 years, which I could tell you very well, I've maintained it. I've dug out the drainage ditch by the side of the right-of-way. I've picked up trash. I've cut the grass, and I've used it. I use it to park cars for football games, and I let the Esso Club use it because they have very limited parking. I've held it out as mine to anybody that says anything, including Clemson University. I've told them they could not park any of their cars from their so-called Lot 15 because it's not theirs. And they have pretty much towed the line on that. until this came up. And the only reason I know this came up is because Mr. Whitehurst told me about it, sought me out and told me about it. I didn't know this was going on. I definitely would say that I have ownership interest in that entire right-of-way. There are several legal doctrines that I base that on. I don't know if I ever told you, Mr. Whitehurst, but I am a lawyer. And my first contention would be that when that right-of-way was extinguished in 1959, there was nothing on the books that said that it was entitled or was titled to the county, unless there was a deed written to you sometime later than that, which right now I don't know. Maybe Clemson has it, I don't know. But they've never expressed an ownership interest to me. And if in 1959, when that right-of-way was extinguished, it's my understanding that the two adjoining landowners would meet in the middle of the extinguished right-of-way. Now, I have a question, and it's a legal question. I don't want to get too lawyerly, not at all. But I have a question as to whether or not a state institution can move into an abandoned state right-of-way. That'd be the first question I'd have. There's several others. But actually, I guess since 1985, I have made it known to representatives of Clemson University that I consider my property line to be the outside of the old right-of-way. The university leased that piece of property, which would be on the other side of the old Highway 123, to Tom Milford, who ran the university printing services. Beginning in 1959, I think the lease terminated in 2009. The university decided not to renew it. So at that point, Tom's son-in-law, Jay Cooper, abandoned the property. It had been used variously as the printing office for most of its existence. Successively, it was used as Jay's surveying office and as a church. Now, I never contested any of this, although as soon as I got home from law school, I made sure Jay knew where the property line was as far as I considered it, and that he was using that property to the edge of the bank there with my permission. We're good friends, and yeah, he understood that, so we got along. Besides that, I didn't want to displace a good friend who used that property, and he also rented it out for football games. Made a right good bit of money, I suppose. But anyway, yeah, I do have a problem with Clemson University taking it over. I do have a problem with them saying that security be an issue. Let's hit them with a Freedom of Information Act and see just how many of the parking lots they've got down there.
Well, what I don't want to do, Mr. Bodiford, what I don't want to do is get it in between you and Clemson on some property dispute y'all may have. So
Well, I
that's
don't want
not,
to either.
well, that's, so all I'm saying there is you know, I was certainly unaware, and staff was unaware that there was an ongoing dispute. Has it ever been litigated?
No. As a matter of fact, I was not going to move to quiet title until I felt like I had sufficient ground to stand on from an adversarial possession standpoint if that issue came up.
How long have you been aware of the adverse claim?
Well, since I took property law my freshman year in law school. And that's about when I told Jay that this is where I think the property boundary is. And since that time, the university has never said one word to me about anything. They've never come over there and maintained it. As a matter of fact, the maintenance that I undertake on the place now was done by Jay Cooper. I've never seen the university come down there and do anything. Now, when I go down there and pick up trash after football games and bag it, they'll come by and pick it up. But that's not Clemson University, that's a subcontract.
What I could offer to do, because there's obviously no way that we can serve as the judge of this contrary claim between
I
them.
understand.
Is put the parties together and us just,
Well, I think what's happened here is Clemson's trying to do an end around to curve that in and expand parking lot 15.
Sir, I've tried to contact them several times to talk about this. They never call me back. All I get is, I'll call that to the attention of my superiors. And
right?
apparently, they think you are their superior.
I'm not, certainly not their superior.
Well, it's the only place they've ever brought it up. They never call me. And I'm not hard to find, am I, Mr. Whitehurst?
No, that was.
Anytime they want to talk to me,
Well, I
I'm
would,
sitting right there.
I would certainly hope that Clemson would go looking for you before they sent something like this to us.
Can I bring up a thought here? We are told that we have the maintenance right away on this, and Clemson wants us to give them a quick deed.
That's right.
for them.
That's right.
Our policy as a county is when we abandon a property, we give it to the adjacent landowner. Well, we have adjacent landowners on both sides of this road.
No, they've said what Clemson is telling us is that they're the adjacent.
They're not.
Well, I can't
If you look
judge
at the
that.
plat, it's not them, because on the other side of the road is his property. It even says so on the plat they show. So it seemed to me that if we wanted since they're telling us that we have the authority to do this, is we just split it right down the middle and say, Clemson, you can take that half, and Mr. Bodford can take that half.
And see, as far as that goes, from the county standpoint, from the administrative staff side, that's fine with us.
That would
We
be
don't have a
consistent
concern.
with what the county has done in the past, because we have adjacent landowners on both sides of that road.
My only holdup or hiccup to that is, if you'll think back of every time we've discussed this, it's ours, it's not ours, it's ours, it's not ours, we have the right, we don't have the right. Like literally that is the conversation, and all I'm hearing tonight is, we really don't need to be in the middle of something that truthfully is going to end up civil before it's all said.
We have no position on this.
Well,
I
here's
mean,
the thing is
seriously.
that we've been told by the state that we're in charge of maintenance.
That's right.
Now that may be wrong, and if that's wrong and he is the owner, then this is a moot point.
That's right.
Okay, so there's that part to solve, but let's just say it comes back to, yes, we are the ones in charge of maintenance according to the state, so then we have to make a decision on which, now, we can't make that decision tonight, I don't believe, because we don't know whether he's the rightful property owner or not.
Yeah.
I think that's the first question to decide, and that's something that you're gonna have to come up with to maybe tell us, because Clemson's not interested.
I'd be more than happy to put
This whole
presentation
thing is all set up, just to put it over there so they can strong arm him and say, sorry, you're out.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Is if, we can't even get involved, if there's an ongoing dispute, is what you just said, right? We can't even do anything, so I would make a motion, we table this until
Second.
the dispute's resolved.
Motion
Well,
to table second.
I agree. We're gonna table it till we find out who has the authority here. Once we have that authority, that may come back and all that.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
which is
May not,
fine,
but
that's
we can't
fine,
decide
but we
till
can't
then.
do anything until that's resolved,
That's right, I agree.
so.
All right, I have a motion to table in a second, pending further inquiry, obviously.
Can we go maybe direction? Because obviously we need to know. You gotta come up with something that justifies your ownership of the property in some legal form. Now, you're a lawyer, and there's a lawyer, and we got lawyers, and figure out what the true story is. Because the county has an interest in finding out who the rightful owner is.
That's true, but we don't want to put ourselves in a position of being the arbiter of
We
this.
don't have to argue. We just got, the law should be, there should be a rightful owner.
Mr. Chairman. My suggestion is that we give direction to Mr. Roper to find out specifics on that before we move forward.
Right. I deed check, whatever, find out, and talk to Mr. Bodford, figure out whatever we want to figure out, then we can decide which direction.
So,
Mr. Chairman, my issues with the process, and he mentioned it, the first words out of his mouth was, the first question I had was, who owns the property? And that should have been uncovered immediately, that nobody is clear who owns it. That should have been a red flag right there. The second thing is, whenever you're dealing with something like this, you should always talk to the surrounding property owners, because they're constituents. And I would talk to them, one, is there any opposition? Two, you want to buy the property, and maybe you'll pay $6,000 for it. You always want to look at it like that, because you don't want to give advantage to an institution versus a citizen, and that's basically what was happening.
Mr. Said, I'd have been more than happy to talk to Clemson at any point.
Well, that was just, theoretical. I mean, you know, but that's the process, the way it should have gone. Who owns the property? Then you go out and talk to the property owners. And you give them an equal chance to buy it. In this case, I guess you're trying to sell this right away for $5,000. My issue was more with the process than anything. You need to figure out what's going on with Clemson, who owns the property. Once that's determined, then come back to us. It's really out of our hands, right?
I agree.
And probably stay out of our hands.
If we don't bring it up the next meeting, it's gone.
Oh, then, well, we can still bring it up next meeting and,
We just need to make sure if we table it, it has to be brought up the next meeting, otherwise it's gone.
how much time do you think it's gonna take to?
Well, I assume, based on what I'm hearing tonight, that this is not going to have an easy answer. It's probably not going to have an answer without a court order. So I don't think tabling is the right thing to do.
Okay,
This is
Leave it in the.
just don't take
my
it,
motion
one
to
other
say
thing
leave
I'd
it in the
like-
committee of the whole
Right.
until we get the.
right.
One other thing I'd like to
Just a
add, and you
second.
probably need to know this, because I'm aware of it, but I haven't really gone into the legal ramifications of it. At the time that right-of-way was extinguished, Clemson University, Clemson College then, was not in Pickens County.
That's
It was
right.
in Oconee.
Right.
The county line went right down the center of that right-of-way we're discussing, and the property. I have a question, just, does Pickens County have any interest in this past the old middle of the highway?
Yeah, so the answer to that I'm pretty confident of, and that is because when the boundary changed, if it's a public thoroughfare that's not owned or operated by the municipality, that maintenance responsibility devolves on the county that has jurisdiction. So as far as that goes, it's not still the problem of Oconee County. But that doesn't speak to your ongoing dispute with Clemson, which I can't speak to.
I'm going back to 1959 before the 1962 ordinance was written that governs pretty much everything you said so far. And, well, we're not in a moot court, so.
That's
we'll
right.
let it go.
No, I agree. I agree.
Mr. Chairman, just for purposes of tonight, we can't move forward with anything.
I don't
so
see
we
how.
can't vote on this
Right.
and all we've done now is to say leave it in committee.
The only thing I would want to add is just in terms of the way staff approaches this kind of issue, and I don't want to belabor this point, but this is from our standpoint, would be something, we wouldn't do a title search before we surrendered a right of way. We wouldn't do that kind of work. And so if this dispute is active and ongoing, it's fortunate that he came forward at this point, because our routine process that's existed prior to me being involved would be that,
So
okay,
that's
you
a
got
separate issue, the
That's a
process.
separate
I was
issue.
gonna say, but that is truthfully the issue, and the reason this is the 10th time, and that's an exaggeration, but the 10th
Right.
time that we've talked about this, is whose property is it? And we've literally had that conversation, and one of the easiest ways to find out whose property it is a title search, right?
Yeah, so what Clemson has done a title search. The attorneys for Clemson have told us they've done a title search, and we're the only adverse. Now, if that's wrong, but we wouldn't normally, in any course of business, do a title search of our own.
One of my favorite quotes of all time is trust but verify.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess we're fortunate.
Mr. Whitehurst,
I
thank
got
you.
curious enough to go out there and say, something doesn't smell right.
But I would say that if we're going to, that you're talking about, and I'm sorry to belabor this point, but if you're talking about a standard of care where we're going to review these kind of things at this level, there's going to be an expense incurred in that.
I guess it's just a matter of going out there, because I went out there just to look, and I saw the sign, and I thought, okay, somebody's got interest here. And maybe it's just talking to those other property owners that are across there, especially when you're dealing with an institution.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. The issue is that he lives in his district, and there's this Robin Riggins, who I'm not sure exactly where he lives. But let's just say we would have did this and gave this to Clemson.
Right.
He would have came forward and complained to him. So there's got to be, you got to kind of at least talk to these people around to avoid it. There's no expense in it. You just pick up the phone and call them. What I was going to say tonight was call these two people and ask them if they have opposition, ask them if they want to buy it. That would have been the first two things I would have said.
What I would say is, and I mean, it depends on the standards y'all want to apply. I certainly want to be guided by the standards you all want to apply. But I will tell you that if we are asked to quit claim deed something to someone, okay? We're not going to give away something we don't own. The nature of a quitclaim deed is whatever interest you might have, you give to me. So we would make no representations of title. There would be no warranties that ran with the title. It's a quitclaim deed. So we would just be saying, our hands are off. So even if we did exactly what Clemson asked us to do, it would not impact his situation. This is a right-of-way issue.
So
Mr. Vice Chairman.
I have a question. How often does that happen?
What, a surrender of a right-of-way?
I mean, is it often?
It's a relatively routine request when it's handled between like a city.
This though? This
Not like this.
I mean, we've not had any, since I've been here, I can't remember anything like this. So to me, this was a red flag. I mean, I agree with Councilman Seda that a phone call, it's worth a phone call. I mean, it's part of our process.
Or the councilman could just make a phone call. Trust me, if these people were in my district, I would have called them. I would have called them.
Well, it sounds like that's
Yeah,
what
and I was
My
remiss
district,
for
and I'm
not,
trying to go in Inslee's district.
yeah.
I knew Tom Milford, I knew the property, and I've dealt with Clemson for a number of years here, and I've gotten to where I just don't trust what comes out of there, and that's on public record.
Well, so I
I went to school there.
I
but-
sit here as one of the few Gamecocks in the room, and I can say that I haven't had that experience, but I will, of course, defer to the authority there.
So can I get some clarity on this, if you don't mind? So we have an open motion to table it. If we just table with no direction and no timetable, then this can come back at some point if they clarify the ownership or whatnot.
Do not table, that's an issue.
I
Well,
amended
let's
it.
say he amended his, so just for clarification, you withdrew
Well, if
your
you don't, you
motion
don't.
to table.
And
Gonna leave
amended it to leave it in the committee of the whole until we get.
And that doesn't take a motion to leave it in committee with no action.
It's just
other
no
than-
actions needed.
All right.
See what I'm saying?
All right. Any other discussion over agenda item D? We're going to leave it in committee, no action other than direction for staff.
Thank you.
No other issues there?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your
Thank you, Mr.
time.
Bodiford. It's good to see you.
All right, we'll move back to log number 165, and I'm not going to read it all again.
864, 633, 8866. I love it also.
Sure.
All right, we're moving back to log number 165. Mr. Roper?
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Log number 165 is past first reading in title only, and you asked for it to come to the committee for further study. I'll tell you just a little bit about process, since we were talking about process a few moments ago. The process that led us to be here tonight on this item was that really starting back several years ago, but most specifically starting with council's goals this past year, where council talked about a conservative budget. We've struggled with programming at the Performing Arts Center for several years now, predates me. And we've struggled with how to take a conservative government with very limited means and run a venue like this the way that it should be. So through some conversations with members of council, and then also I notified you I was thinking about doing this by email back in August, we put this out and requested proposals. We put it through our normal procurement process. We put it out on Skibo. We put it out in the Greenville News. We ran it on our website to see who might be interested in running the Performing Arts Center. We had several people bring inquiries to us about the Performing Arts Center, but only one qualified group actually submitted a proposal, and that group is the one that we have in front of you tonight. The folks weren't strangers to us. We've known these guys because the guys have been in and around the Performing Arts Center for a couple of years on a volunteer basis. I think one of them, and I might be corrected by this, but they served on the board of the PC PAC for a while. So regardless, we knew they knew the facility. We knew that they brought some experience to bear, and so it seemed like a good way for us to find somebody that has expertise far beyond what a local government could provide in running it. So what we've done is we entered into a temporary agreement with them, which you all have a copy of, that says on the face of it, it's subject to further approval by Pickens County Council. And then based on y'all's request to find out more, I asked them to come tonight. So what I'm going to do is surrender this so they can run the documents they prepared. And I think Mr. Justin Williams and Mr. Dindy Brooks will come up and present to you the information they want to present to you about their proposal to operate the Performing Arts Center.
Good evening, how are y'all?
Aye.
Well, good, good. Just want to start off by saying I'm an entertainer, so I'm not, as far as my hand movement and stuff like that, and speaking in government, I don't do that. So I'm going to start off kind of giving a past of who we are and what we are. We're just not a holdings company. We are actually folks in the community that work and have a passion for the arts and entertainment. I've dedicated my life to the arts and entertainment. I've was voted on the South Carolina Entertainment and Music Hall of Fame, which was established back in 1989 under Dr. David Godbold, who was the first entertainment commissioner for the state of South Carolina, and Secretary of State Jim Miles. Those folks founded it. Up to date, we have about 64 entertainers that have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. And about 2.5 years ago, I dedicated my life totally free, I don't get paid by this organization, to go around and help local theaters, events, and festivals. One locally here, the Azalea Fest, we stepped in a few years ago to help them kind of craft who they are and how they can bring more money into their festival. And it's free of charge through the Hall of Fame. That's what we do, and that's what we do. We try to focus on arts and entertainment for local areas. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get started on exactly who our holdings company is. And we started our relationship with the Pickens County Performing Arts Center about 2.5 years ago. So when we talk about vetting, I feel like I've vetted myself a lot there at the Pickens County Performing Arts Center. And lately, since we were able to open back up in October, we've been spending hours, 12 hours. I mean, since Christmas, we've been there, 12-hour days. We had a Christmas week there, Wednesday through Sunday, and we were there 12 hours a day to make it happen. All volunteer. We didn't make any money there, and trying to find teams and the boards and stuff to put it together, it's tough in a market like this. So, but people do want entertainment, and we're trying to find different ways to work within the community and different theaters to make that happen. So, I'm going to start off kind of introducing who I am. Justin Ray Williams. I am doing business as Justin Ray Williams. My brand is everything to me in the entertainment business. We also started a couple of different entities as far as entertainment goes to help get the word out about entertainment. We were on 94.5 The Answer for about a year till the pandemic hit. We did the Fame Show, and we recognized for free musicians, artists, theater, anything going on in the upstate. That's what we did, and that was our whole focus in that show with the Entertainment and Music Hall of Fame. So going from there, going back a little bit before I came actually to the upstate here, I'm from originally Winter Park, Florida, Orlando, Florida, and I've been in this business for almost a little over 20 years. I went to school at Full Sail University. They're a full service. When you talk about entertainment, they do it. Movies, films, video games, production, arts, I mean, you name it, they do it. That's where I got my degree. I started back in '98, to date me a little bit. And then from there, I went on and opened a entertainment venue. It was a 14,000 square foot place. We had a sports bar on the backside, and we had an entertainment venue on the front side, nightclub and entertainment venue. And we brought in acts, everything from your local bands all the way up to comedians and national touring acts there as well. I then moved here back in 2011, 12-ish, into the Greenville area. I partnered with a group here that actually is still here. I was bought out of it, but Blues Boulevard Jazz, that is in downtown Greenville, right across from the Peace Center on the Reedy River there. It is a small, holds about 150 people, but is a speakeasy, a blues bar there, and we brought in, you name it, blues and jazz acts there, and that's what we did. From there, I met Dindy, and we started a company to get out and get the word out about entertainment and arts. And that's where we come into play. So there's Dindy Brooks there. He's my partner in what we do. He's going to come up later. He's more of the logistics guy. I'm more of the front guy. He goes into all those numbers that we don't really like to look at. This is a magazine article posted last year, last December actually. The Chard magazine is a South Carolina entertainment and industrial magazine. They featured us as the premier entertainment company for in the state of South Carolina for things that we've done with Lancaster County, Lancaster City, Kershaw, Pickens, and Pageland as well. And you can check that article out. I'm just give some of our credentials of who we work with and what I do. South Carolina Entertainment and Music Hall of Fame. Again, I kind of explained who that was. Pearl Street Records, we are a CMA award-winning record label. It's been around for 35 years. I am a director and senior, and we sign artists. We sign folks directly from, my job is directly from my passion in South Carolina. So I just signed recently a local guy, Luke Smith. He plays around, was going to play at the Pickens Festival. We signed him to a deal. We signed Wits End Band. They're actually out of Kershaw and Columbia area, and they actually just won this weekend the Carolina Country Music Awards. It's North and South Carolina artists, and they just won Entertainer of the Year and Country Single of the Year. And we actually brought Wits End here when we did the Veterans event at the Pickens Theater a year and a half ago, a couple of months ago, for the Veterans show there. I also am the special events coordinator for the Wounded Warrior program, not to mistake it for the Wounded Warrior Project. This is the direct affiliation with the DoD, the Department of Defense. Dr. David Godbold, who founded the Hall of Fame, runs that organization now as the national director for the Wounded Warrior program. And we brought him into a couple of events that we did. We brought him over to the Salute Veterans event there. He spoke there. And then you also may have heard of the Watermelon Crawl that we did at Haygood Mill. And I believe Haygood Mill will still speak on. That's probably their best event that they've had to date as far as being able to raise money for their organization over there. We also this year, knowing that the pandemic hit, we were actually in talks with some major TV production companies. So we're a full-service entertainment production company. We provide everything from the ground up to production, all the way into TV networks and television shows. So we've partnered and obtained a production license with Amazon Fire, Roku, Apple TV, Chrome, Android, and we are producing actual TV channels and networks right now in production. We just launched that this year. Some of the current channels that we have in development, the Wounded Warrior program, All American Warrior, the Fame Radio Network, which we produce our own radio shows and podcasts for entertainment, and then the list goes on and on. We just contracted Todd Stearns from Fox News to do his with us as well. We're working with local fire departments to put out a channel called Fire Safety 101 for the community, for schools, that they are able to log on to their TV and look at their local fire department there, and you know, just helping the community overall. So we're in everything. When we talk about what we do as far as entertainment and production, we're entertainment production and we produce entertainment. So it comes to records, we do it. It comes to theaters, we do it. It comes to festivals, we do it all. We hit it all. Here are some of the festivals that we did before the pandemic hit. Rock the Rose, which is in Lancaster, Pageland, a Watermelon Festival. It's they claim to be the largest watermelon festival in the world and the longest running watermelon festival in the world, and we produce and help put that up over there in Pageland. Red Rose Festival, that's been around for 50 years as well. We do that as well. From the ground up, we produce everything. And over the last few years, we partnered with, you may have heard of him, the guy that wrote Watermelon Crawl song. He's actually from Anderson and was just inducted into the Hall of Fame. We partnered up with him to do Watermelon Crawl Festival, and we brought the festival over to Haygood Mill. We were going to do it again this year. Obviously, the pandemic hit on us. Country Folks Will Survive was born in the pandemic. It was based around, happened in Kershaw. It was based around, for folks to get out, was a tailgate party, so folks could party safely. We found 100 acres in Kershaw, and we brought a concert to Kershaw in August, actually. And so folks can get out, tailgate within their circle, and have a good time. And then we brought that to Pickens here in November. We added a barbecue fest at Market at the Mill there, and it was a great deal. We had local artists come and play, and a lot of, it was 22 trucks, barbecue trucks out of South Carolina came out for it as well. And we did the same thing, social distancing, cars and stuff like, gave different options. Honky Tonk Christmas is also another song that was written by the famous Zach Turner. And Zach Turner's wrote, he was actually founded, he did Keith Whitley's I'm Over You. It was actually his headlining song. So we partner with a bunch of different artists from South Carolina. Now getting into the actual Pickens County Performing Arts Center, we've basically started a relationship there when I believe the former Jay was there. We started our relationship with him saying, hey, they were looking for folks to bring acts and theater and events to the Pickens County Performing Arts Center, and we started a conversation. So since that day, we've been putting in events since that year, 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago. And basically in 2020, we're the only event company that was essentially putting events into the PAC, and the year before we were about 50% of that. We had a movie here produced locally for Lakes and Bridges, and it was Labs for Dyslexia. It was a huge success. We premiered it at the Pickens County Performing Arts Center. We had about 600 people. Senator Rex was involved in that to help us get that off the ground. Recently, we had James Gregory there, which was pretty good, successful. A couple of reschedulings had to happen during the pandemic. And then while we were there, the Marshall Tucker Band showed up from the Hall of Fame. They were inducted into the Hall of Fame. There's Doug there. It's in the office there. He signed a guitar. We're going to put it up in the Pickens Performing Arts Center there. Some of the other past, there's the Salute to Veterans, the Honky Tonk Christmas. This was a comedy show that we brought Bean and Bailey. They're a national act that was recognized for Chick-fil-A. They do all these Chick-fil-A songs. It was really cool. Upcoming shows that we have going on that we've booked, and now these shows take time to book. So it's not like we just get on the phone and tomorrow we're able to just put someone in the theater. These shows take time. So one of the shows in particular we have coming up here is for the Leukemia Society. We're raising money for a little boy that got leukemia, and we were able to organize a bunch of different acts for it. So we got Mac Arnold, who toured with B.B. King, and he's going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame here within either this year or next year, depends on the pandemic. We got the local host, Jadu. Jadu has been working with us and our company for about 10 years. I've been working with Jadu. He was the Greenville Drive host, and was the guy that threw the shirts out that you never caught, because I never caught one. But and then he's also the Clemson basketball MC for the men's and women. We also have Brandon Rainwater. He's a touring comedian. He's also on the Hall of Fame board as well, but he tours through all the comedy clubs through the Southeast. So these are just some of the events that we have coming up. We got PAC Unplugged is another one. It's one Thursday out of the month, third Thursdays. It's an intimate session with a musician. He gets to break down his guitar. The audience gets to ask questions about how does he do it, what does he do, and it was really cool. We had the first one, and we actually got Roku to come in and film that first one, and they're going to put it on one of their guitar channels for us. So that's really cool. We're hoping that they're going to come back to film each one of these guitar unplugged sessions. We were able to negotiate some deals with some larger national touring Christian acts. These deals have been in work since October. This is how long, and we just got them sealed last Sunday with it. And Tim Timmons, he has 2 #1 hit songs on the radio right now on Christian radio. Johnny Dez, he'll be here in June. And then we have the big act, which is Big Daddy Weave. He's usually goes for about 30 grand, but during the pandemic, they're not working. We're able to negotiate a $10,000 deal with Big Daddy Weave to bring him in. Ticket tier isn't going to be necessarily what the PAC's used to on an event like this. So in order to satisfy the writer on this, they require that Big Daddy gets a $65 ticket on the top end, which is a question and answer session with Big Daddy, and then on the low end, $25. So we thought we were going to have some issues, but we're not. The tickets that are selling are the $65 for this thing. So people don't have a problem paying for really good acts to come in. And then there's also the option for we have all these other events like Tim Timmons, he starts at $15. He's a national touring act. He's only $3 grand to put on. So we're able to, work our magic in some of those things. Also for Black History Month coming up here in February, we're working with Jadu. He has a theater show called One Voice, a Black History narrative. We actually did a couple of digital things with Jadu during the pandemic back in June. We actually put on One Voice here in the upstate, and we did it digitally. And he actually raised the first show he did $20,000 that went back to Black American history, which was phenomenal. We were happy to partner with him. And he also did another one in October, did about $10,000. And we're going to bring his show over to the PAC in October. And then Jamie Wright is a local artist here, and she does a tribute to Aretha Franklin. And it's an amazing act, and we thought it would work well in February for what we're doing. I worked with folks, and I have personal references that anybody's happy to talk to. I'm happy to give the numbers. But Dr. David Godbold out of Washington for the Wounded Warrior Program, Wes Cox, he's Representative 10 over in the Anderson kind of borderline Pickens area. Jimmy Davis, he's also over there where I live on the Pickens, Powdersville borderline. And Dan Bracken, he's a local real estate fella. And these guys I've worked with over the years on different events. And I also run, just to be clear, I also run the Powdersville Live, which is a political talk show and blog in the area. And these folks all come on and help us get the word out on things. So that's kind of who my company is and what we do and what we've done in the past. And I'm going to turn it over to Dendy. Dendy's going to kind of get into the logistics of the layout of the financing, how we're able to put these budgets together and what it looks like for us from here.
All right, so I'm, like he said, not the front man, so as far as the mouthpiece, that's all him. So I'm gonna rely on y'all as far as questions, as far as finances go. I do want to put some things in light. If you'll look at, I'm gonna have to get my phone. It's not all there. Basically what we don't want is the perception that we make a phone call, people show up, we sell a bunch of tickets and make a bunch of money. So if you've ever owned a business, you know that there's other operating costs that aren't seen. For instance, in the restaurant business, a lot of famous people think they're going to, continue their financial legacy owning a restaurant when they can buy, make a burger for $1 and sell it for 15. They're making a mint. Well, they fail to realize that they have to pay for gas and power and labor and costs otherwise. So, nothing too much different here. The only real numbers on the sheet are January, obviously, because we've only been working since January 1st. So these are the up-to-date numbers for January. Everything else is speculative based on what we've either booked or hope to book. So if you look to the end of the year, we're looking at about $93,000 is going to cost just to do the minimum as far as the $2,000 or $3,000 shows with one big act during the year, everything else being whatever we can find either free, like the Pack Unplugged, which we started, or something few $100s, like the comedy acts or the murder mystery thing. As we go along, if we stay on that course and everything works out, by December, we will only be in the whole $9,000. So I know there was some questions. We watched last week's council meeting, and I know there was some questions as far as financing and who we are and all that. We are the PAC, essentially. We worked hand in hand with Jay and Roy for the last 2.5 years to make sure that there were events there that not only made money for the PAC, but that were good for the community and help build tourism in Pickens, which I know is, an ultimate goal. Past that, do y'all have any questions? Like I said, I'm not really the mouthpiece.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So the Meals on Wheels is next door.
Yes.
And I was part of the group that had the vision for that, and it took us a long time to put that together. Part of the positioning of that particular location, because there are definitely larger population centers across the county, et cetera. It, from an executive perspective, it seemed good that it was co-located with the Performing Arts Center for the opportunity to host events and whatnot. Part of the kitchen being there, the facilities there. It's one of the nicest buildings in the county. And I've hence left the board for Pickens for the Meals on Wheels, but my impression was it was very difficult to work with the PAC. And I don't recall ever having any engagement with you guys, but the previous entities or whatnot. And what I would say is the opportunity, I think I've seen some of you folks at fundraisers there, the opportunity to have meals, to have the sit-down type event you're talking about, the intimate environment, the ability to do the backstage, the green room type of thing or whatnot, and then to have that flow out and back as far as part of the venue seemed like a no-brainer, and it's been very difficult to materialize over time. So what I would ask you is, from a partner perspective, not just with Meals on Wheels, but they're right there, but with a lot of the other entities across the county that would like to have a venue like yours to support fundraising with some sort of a shared profitability, et cetera. How are you guys kind of positioned for that?
So I'll address that in two parts. As far as the county needing the building, that's in the lease agreement. that the county, unless we already have something paid for, gets first dibs. So as any county entity has full use of whatever they need. As far as the Meals on Wheels, we did do with the the Labs for Dyslexia band, we did partner with Kim over there, and that went really well, I'll be honest. The problem with it is, and we're gonna do it again with the March 13th with the Mac Arnold show. The problem with it is the funding. Because Kim wants X number of dollars just to open the building, plus the catering company that we have to use because she's contracted with them. And then if you want to add on alcohol, which is the only place on that street that can have a beer or wine with a meal, that's an additional minimum of $500. So you're looking at, close to $2,000 just to open it. And then you have to sell the tickets, make sure the food's there. Caterer wants a minimum of 50 people at $20 a head or more. That was the minimum. So yes, we want to do that because both of us, I've been in the restaurant business for 25 years. So food and people, I understand. Same thing with him. Yard House in Greenville is where we met. We spent 5 years managing that place from the ground up. We were there before the building was even there, making sure that that thing went off without a hitch, and we were doing, close to $20 million the first year. So as far as all that, we get that. It's just going to take time.
So what we're talking about tonight is the foundation element of that, so that you guys can have.
I'm sorry, I can't.
What we're talking about tonight is just sets the foundation for you guys to go solve all those tiny problems.
Right.
Okay.
It's a long-term plan, yes. Everything else is just getting there.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. I just joined, so I've been here through this.
Welcome.
So I think generally what I do is assessments first, and they're gonna give me some financial statements about the building going back a few years. That's how I kind of see the lay of the land. But Ken, has anybody actually looked at the fixed costs on that building, the variable costs, and then divided it by, the number of events you would have versus ticket prices and the number of seats you have to sell, and kind of dropping that out? Has that ever been done? Did Jay do something like that?
Get turned back on. I know that Jay looked at some of these kind of issues as ticket prices, but it was more what the market could bear. So he would say, for this type of show, we could charge $20 or $30 or whatever. There hasn't been, I think I can say this safely, there hasn't really been the idea that this was going to operate and make money or lose money. That's been a secondary concern. Money that was made went to the foundation. It didn't come to Pickens County. So it went to the Performing Arts Foundation, the nonprofit board. All that we did was some of the carrying costs, like the maintenance, something needed to be repaired, the groundskeeping. And as a matter of fact, until last year, when then Chairman Costner insisted, we didn't even track it separately, Mr. Seda. I mean, I don't know how else to tell you that.
It wasn't a single budget line, so I made a
Right.
motion to make it a
So-
single budget line.
Then Chairman, now Vice Chairman Costner said, we need to start tracking this for part of the concerns you're raising. And so he made the motion to add that into the budget. So this budget year is the first year that we're even really tracking the cost for that facility that way.
So the second thing is, what I usually do is I like to see a solid framework. And usually with things like this, you would have a board. Okay, and then that board, they would set a general vision. We want musical shows, or we want family-oriented shows, or anything goes shows. And then you hire a director, or you hire a management company. And they know the nuts and bolts of it. They know the booking, they know the local acts, they got to create a calendar, set prices, generate a certain amount of revenue. And they all do that within the vision of the board. Is the board recommending this route?
The board, part of the issue and the reason that we're going this route is because the board is somewhat dysfunctional. There's not a lot of members to the board. The board was very much connected to Mr. Pitts, and when Mr. Pitts retired, a lot of those people dropped off the board. We haven't had success recruiting replacements, any large number. So that's why we started talking last year, and this is before your time, so certainly understand the question. That's why we started talking about, we've got to find another way to make this facility work. And so that's what brought us to the idea of, let's find somebody that will operate it, that's got a passion for it.
So,
what-
Mr. Sada,
okay.
just to run on that point, I would like to take a moment to kind of revisit some history, just to have everything out on the table so everyone's in the same place. And I'm going to rely on you, Councilman Whitehurst, Vice Chairman Costner, and Councilman Thames, you correct me if I'm wrong. So a couple years ago, we decided that government shouldn't be in the entertainment business. And that's the Haygood Mill, that's the Performing Arts Center, and truthfully, even down to the museum to some level, we started looking at ways that we could not use tax dollars to run these venues and events. And that was the idea behind each of the foundations that we set up. Some of the foundations have done better than others. There's no secret about that. The ultimate goal and the conversation that was had in many committee of the whole meetings was, ideally, we seat these boards, they become self-sufficient, they run on their own, they flow on their own, and within hopefully 3 years from doing that, we would start seeing the process of a transition or a shift of power. That was the goal. At the Haygood Mill, that happened a lot quicker than the anticipated plan, and that's great. At the foundation, they do seem to have lost some traction. They've gone through a couple different chair people. You'd have buy-in at moments, and then at moments you wouldn't have buy-in, and the board would go defunct. I will tell you that myself and Vice Chairman Costner both are the council representatives. That's the other thing we did to kind of help things flow, just like we do with Economic Alliance, Pickens board. There are 2 members of council on that board. We did the same thing with each of those boards to try to kind of help steer and keep it flowing. The ultimate goal was to see that shift in that transition. Unfortunately, I cannot tell you the last time that the Performing Arts Center board met. That is part of the reason why I think that this conversation even happened, was there is no direction there. It had stalled out, if you will. We wanted, that is exactly what we wanted, was for the board to be running, powerful, fundraising, and step up and say either we're going to run the facility ourselves, kind of like Haygood Mill did, or we're going to hire a company to run the facility. That just didn't happen, and we actually started moving backwards with that board, which, like I say, is why we're here there. Is that a good summation of the last couple of years?
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is the original intent was that you had those 3 entities. And in those 3 entities, those boards were created to be the fundraising arm, so that if Haygood Mill, if they come up with a spreadsheet like this and said, we're $10,000 short, the board's going, you know what, we've done this fundraising and we're going to shore it up. So Haygood Mill's become a different entity because it's of how it evolved. The museum still sits, they've got a good, strong board, and they offer oversight and work with the director. Ultimately, the director decides what's in there, but the board works with them. So with the PAC, the problem is, like Mr. Chairman said, the board became very dysfunctional. Even the meetings that I went to, when it was full, it seemed that it was people that were very apathetic. They were more wanting to just have their name associated with that board. And rather than throw stones at the past, I mean, going forward, it just seems to me like that board should be there to work in conjunction with whatever, whatever entity is working with the PAC. But if we're entering into an MOU with a business, then I would think that they would have a discretion on what happens there.
So I apologize for interrupting Councilman Sada. I'll let you go ahead and finish, but I did want to throw that little bit of background for everyone's knowledge.
And just to add on to that, and I don't want to belabor Mr. Sada's questions, I don't want to delay those, but the feeling was in the conversations that we had is if we find people who have experience running a box office and people see this thing done professionally in a way that I don't think county government, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, I hope, a particularly small for its population county government can run this type of facility. And so the board is going to feel that, and the board's going to suffer because of that. It seems to me that the path we're trying to take here is to find some professionals to run it, And nothing will help recruit a volunteer board like Success. If we can actually establish a track record of success there, I think we'll solve our board issue.
That was the other thing I neglected to mention. So that board was originally designed to be a working board, so that you've got 12 people on the board, and they're not only helping with the fundraising, but they're working the box office, they're being the usher, they're helping with production, they're whatever they need, wherever a hand needs to be in. If there's a show going on, they're pitching in. It's a work, that was the original concept, and it morphed into something completely different.
But we're not getting rid of the board. The board is still going to be there and viable, and to a certain degree, collaborating with these folks, right?
That's the ultimate goal.
So let me to try to clarify so I can understand this. We already have a tourism-focused entity. We already have a strategy. We've already hired folks to come in and tell us what to do for at the global perspective where the governance board, group should be at. You guys have tried a bunch of things where y'all would be more closely involved with it, and so what you're now saying is, instead of waiting until that board is a bunch of superheroes, then they can try to find, which could take forever because of the level of apathy, to go ahead and find an organization that's going to go out there and start, doing the groundwork or whatnot, and then try to help those folks find people that are going to complement them from a skills perspective. Motion to approve.
That's it.
I have some comments.
Well, let me finish what I, let me.
Hold
finish
on,
my
gentlemen,
question.
hold on. I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second on the motion?
I will second, but I mean, we can still discuss.
All right, now we can still discuss.
Let me
Mr. Slade, I'm going to shift back to you.
So the board's going to continue, it won't be eliminated.
Yeah, I don't get to
There's
decide
nothing on
this,
the,
but
there
we've
is
never
nothing
said
on the
anything about
table
changing.
to eliminate the board.
Okay, what authority will the board have?
So I'm only going to speak because I know from how we set this up, the board was originally created to be the fundraising arm of the entity, whether it's the museum, Hagen Mill, or the PAC. So we're talking about specifically with the PAC, the board is to be that fundraising arm. Hopefully, they're going to be people that are very involved in the arts community, that are have a passion for whatever. So they're going to want to pitch in and help.
Well, I think what's going to happen is, let's assume you walk out, you decide you don't want it.
3 years.
Somebody else
It's
comes.
a
and somebody-
three-year contract.
Okay, let's just say tonight you walk out, and we end up hiring somebody else. And this person has management control under a contract. And they bring in acts that you don't like, that people in the community complain about. They're gonna come to you, Roy. You're not gonna have any control.
So
Let me finish my point.
Sure.
So my point is, the reason I think you need a board, and the board needs to be active, and I think it was the council just didn't pick good board members. That's the root of the problem. Is that their job is to set a vision. And that vision is gonna be generally what we wanna do here. And then they would hire somebody to actually implement that. But if you just if you just put this board aside, and they don't really look like they have any authority under this contract. And why they would volunteer for something they have no input into is beyond me. They're surely not gonna fundraise for us.
So, Mr. Sada, I want to actually clarify, because I don't know that you're getting the point. I want you to think about Clemson University. They have a board of trustees. That is this group right here, sitting at these tables. They also have IPTE, which is a fundraising arm of the university. The IPTE has a board. The IPTE board has no say over the university functions at all. In fact, this is Clemson University Board of Directors, not IPTE. IPTE is going to benefit.
It does not raise money for the university.
Okay,
It's totally separate.
so let's go Tri-County. I can speak Tri-County.
Maybe a little different scenario.
Okay,
That
Tri-County
doesn't quite
Tech
fit.
has a board of directors, and then they have a foundation board. The foundation board has no say in the operation of Tri-County Technical College, but they have all the say in the fundraising for Tri-County Technical College. That is the goal, scope, idea. Ultimately, the contract's going to lay on our hands.
So who's,
The fundraising comes out of the foundation.
okay, so who's been bringing in these shows the last year? The board
So
or the administration?
We have.
Are you a member of the board?
We've been meeting
Are
with.
you a member of the board?
Through we
I
read the
was a
pack.
member of the board. yeah.
Okay,
I'm
so
still a member of the board.
Okay,
yeah.
so it sounds like the board might have been bringing in some of these things with him actually doing it.
absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead.
So, but you're saying going forward, the board is not gonna be involved in that, they're just gonna be raising money?
I'm not saying that at all. So if the board comes and says, we want to create the fish show, and we want to bring that in, they're going to work with them and go, absolutely, because we know you're our fundraising arm, and we're going to work together with you on these shows. So they have the ability to create whatever shows that they want to. I do want to speak to your point. Their job is not to set the vision. That's ours and how we set up the bylaws. And that's what we did when we started this thing, how many ever years ago. The board's job is not to set vision, as I understand it. The other point that I wanted to make is that when I was the CEO of Easley Foothills Playhouse, ran into the same situation here about types of shows. And they made the horrible choice to create a B-side of shows. And the B-side of shows was designed to introduce new types of shows, but what they wound up doing was created in a family atmosphere theater, rated R shows at times, which basically ticked off all of their patrons. They went from 300 people who bought year-long memberships to 0. So it's going to be incumbent on the people who are putting the money in. They're putting their money in, right? They've got this. We haven't invested this money in these artists coming. Has the county invested this money? No, it's your company that did.
Well, it's a partnership with the board. So our ultimate
So
vision.
you're using the board funds.
Correct. So we're funding.
Okay.
We're not 100% funding. We're working with the 2 board members that are there to create this, because the ultimate goal is to make sure that the board is self-sustaining when we leave.
Councilman Whitehurst.
I want to back out a little bit.
All right.
First off, we have made mistakes along the way. Haygood Mill, I don't call that a success right now for you new members. The idea is to have these people be self-sufficient at some point, and they are far from it. And I'm not real impressed with what's happening there. The Arts Center has been a failure. We brought a guy in who made a lot of claims, spent a lot of money, of the county's money, and putting a board together that he recommended all those people, okay? Now, you got a great idea here. I don't know how much of this is real and how much you said it's a hope for it. And please, on the last stuff you may not, it's not always comfortable.
No, by all means.
But you've been there for 2.5 years. You just finished telling us that we've struggled having this thing booked out. Okay, so my question is, first off, what I'd requested when we had this meeting was the bid documents and what the proposal was, and the submittals, okay? And nothing against you guys, but I want to know what your track record is for the last 2.5 years, because the administrator just told us that we've not done well. And
My
point is that you're asking us to come put this into you, but you've already been here and it's not working.
Our events did well. The difference was, at the time, we were renting the pack per event.
So we would pay $1,500 to come in there and bring an event.
Okay, so.
My events were successful because I want to make money.
So you were functioning as a board member and a separate promoter?
All the board members were usually on theaters, all board members are operating because they do something in the entertainment to bring us their background to the theater. So we also had a local theater company who was on the board, and they brought their theater shows to the PAC as well. A couple of Christmas shows, some spring shows. And so most of the board members that were on there were part of the promotions and would rent the theater out to bring their shows there.
Okay, by the way, I've heard very good things about you from what I heard. I think you're excellent. My issue is just with the framework you're gonna have. Because honestly, I kind of heard 2 different answers. One was that they're just a foundation board, and one was, no, they'll be able to pick the shows. So that's gotta be clearer to me.
Yeah, I think it is. Do we have bylaws?
I don't think the foundation board has any type of functional bylaws. I don't know that
But
y'all
whose
have
money
anything
is
to
gonna
use it.
finance it?
So what has happened in the past? Let's
No,
talk
what's gonna
about,
happen, like, under your system,
Right.
where are you gonna get your money, this $106,000? Where's that coming from?
Well, the board only has 30 grand in their account. So it's gonna have to come majority working with the board to get events with my company to bring in events.
Okay.
So what we did in the past, okay, James Gregory, for instance, we worked with the board. Okay, James Gregory, $6,500. We made a contract deal with the board that we're gonna split everything down the middle. Our job was to promote it. So we would go out and contract, they put $3,000 down on an act, we go spend $3,000 in marketing. We come back together on a spreadsheet. The same thing we did with Haygood Mill. Haygood Mill, we partnered with Haygood Mill and the tourism at that time to come together. We would split the money down down the middle with the boards, and we came back to the tables the next day, whatever that was, and put our spreadsheets together and go, did what, who did this, and here's the profit at the end of the day.
Okay, so if the foundation or the PAC itself is gonna put up half the money, they're gonna want some authority. They're just not gonna raise money and say, do what you want. So that's what needs to be worked out here.
Well, apparently, that's what they have been doing, is the people in the committee have been bringing their own shows. So if you're gonna be bringing the shows, what are they gonna do? How's that gonna work the first?
That's my whole question.
But, yeah, and.
The framework.
But
and
we
to your-
want-
And to your record.
Right.
How many shows have you brought in?
He's done a good job.
No, I wanna know.
He's good at
I
what he
don't know.
does. I've heard a lot of things about it.
In what time
In
frame?
2020, we had
I don't think that's the issue.
about 8 shows, and there was 1 show independent, Kingdom Airs, that we didn't do. So we did all the shows in 2020 for the PAC.
Also, there were 8 shows. How many shows do we need to do in that pack to make it work?
Well,
Our contract is tiered to be, by year 3, to have 3 shows a week for 10 months. So that'd be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or whatever we figure out. Our ultimate goal is to have it Thursday through Sunday, have something on Sunday for the community. You know, arts for the community, summer camps for the community, things of that nature. So it's not only that you're bringing in a big daddy where the community has to pay 25 or 65 bucks. You also have Sunday shows where the kids are free to come, or you do veteran shows where it's free for everybody to come. So working with the community and the board, I had Erica from the board, she's here today, and we've had extensive conversations about what the board can do, and we're limited. We have 2 people. If you take me out of it, there's 2 people there. So we're working to build what that looks like, but it's not like Haygood Mill. Haygood Mill has 40 people that are willing to, you just call them and they show up. But they have a history of who they are, and they've established what they're doing. So you get those people. People love that place. So people are gonna come over. We have to establish that same thing here with the Pickens County Performing Arts Center. So the theater will build its own success, and then theater people will wanna come and work it and be there. So eventually that it will, just like Walhalla. Mark down in Walhalla, very successful. He has a board that fundraises. He brings in all of the events. They don't see eye to eye all the time, but they come to the table because the board has some ideas, he has some ideas, and they make it work. So they fundraise together to make their vision come true. Our vision is to make sure that the board is self-sustaining when we leave.
So let me
That's
ask
who I am
let
in
me ask this question.
integrity.
Why has it not worked so far?
I wasn't in charge of it.
I was about to say, and I want to, for point,
I'm just-
I do, and I want
I'm just asking a question. I'm not
Well-
trying to, I'm just.
No,
So-
you're
so-
fine. No, you can.
Chew it.
This has
Depends on
actually
which
been
time period you're talking
great,
about.
great discussion, and I appreciate it. Councilman Seda, Councilman Whitehurst, Councilman Costner. I want to make sure I understand, because what I have seen between you 2 gentlemen's question is, in the past, we've had a hodgepodge. There's been no structure, we've had a hodgepodge. This board member did this board member did that. We threw a show together when we could with what we had. What we're talking about is physically putting a structure in place. Now, to your point, Councilman Seda, especially on input, of what board members are left, would it bring peace if the majority of those board members signed off, agreed with this concept? Would that help you sleep better?
Me personally, like I said, especially if the board is gonna put up half the money, they're gonna need some authority. They're not gonna just be a foundation.
Can I say that that's not the long-term, that's a short-term plan? Yes,
Oh, okay, but just even day one.
once we, yeah,
Even
right, but
day
once
one.
we get the board,
If they're gonna have to put up some money, they're gonna want some authority.
Yeah, and in the past, the board put up the money for, like, when I would split it with the board, there was no say in the board at all since the beginning. It was literally, I cut the deal with the management company that was running it in there, and then I would show the board and they would just present, hey, these are the events that we have, the board has this amount of money, and we're splitting it with these promoters that come in the building.
And the board would put up the money and do exactly what you wanted every time?
Yes.
I'll tell you, I wouldn't do that. I mean, as a board,
No,
I would want some authority.
I mean,
with
some
going
of,
on.
I mean, Chris was there, Roy's been at the
But the
board.
thing
It
is-
was literally, the folks that were put in place were there to run it, and the board was just there to fundraise for it.
I've done a million volunteer organizations, and I've been the rainmaker, and I've been a guy that just sat there and did nothing. I always feel that if you don't have any input
Absolutely.
into the direction, you are not gonna raise money for it. I'm not gonna raise money for something I think it's a bad idea.
Right.
So my point is, you just need to come together, like, in a perfect world, I would love to see a board that's made up of a financial guy that knows some budgets, a lawyer that knows something about contracts, a marketing person like Roy that knows how to market, because they have oversight over what you're doing.
Yeah.
So.
And we
so they'll
did,
actually-
we
they'll
did
actually-
have all of that.
Yeah,
but
yeah, and then
the
you'll have,
Pandemic
you know,
kind
like
of
an
went a different
educator that
direction.
may be able to get high school kids or college kids to come volunteer, which you need volunteers for these things.
Mm-hmm.
A councilman who have the input of what's going on in the city, and then theater and performance people.
Yeah.
And then you come with these ideas, so they know that you're not speaking Chinese to them. You know, they actually know, they've done it before.
Yeah.
And then you come together, hey, we'll put half the money up for that, and then you go.
Yeah.
But it
And
just
that's
seems
what I
like
like
that
about
board is
Erica.
missing.
She loves the arts, and we have conversations every day about her. What are we doing? We're gonna have some more about what does that look like for the board to develop a future with them. So she loves the arts community. She loves
Secondly,
tons
most of the stuff you just mentioned is our long-term vision. It's
And
just a
I-
matter
And I
of,
think you guys are the guys, so the pieces of direction.
it's a matter of they're not available
And
because
all
the
that.
high school kids aren't allowed to volunteer and
I know,
all that right
but
now,
that's
so.
just a bigger framework, is what I'm looking for. But like I said, I think you're the guy for the job, you've actually proven it. You're the only one that's really had the initiative.
Mr. Chairman,
So- But I want to see a better framework.
I think we failed because we don't have a board that's of any significant size to do it. I mean, Chris and I, Mr. Chairman, the chairman and I, we don't vote. We are there to be the liaison between, here's what the council vision is, we just want to make sure, you know, so that we're not always, you guys got to go over and talk to everybody, so we can come back and kind of report as what's going on. The biggest problem this year was the pandemic. All of a sudden, you couldn't have any shows there, or you could only have shows with X number of people. And kudos to you guys for negotiating contracts. I know that they wound up, you had some artists who said, we'll do 2, and we'll fill it with 200 people here and 200 people here so we can make our total nut. So they really did 2 shows for the price of 1, basically, so that everybody could get to that profit margin. I think we failed because we don't have the right people on it, and that's, I mean, you know, I take ownership of that. I think we need to be, as a council, more involved in making sure that we've got, to Mr. Haceda's point, people that are passionate. I agree with you. There should be an attorney on there. There should be an accountant. And you're right. They did have those people there, but a lot of this fizzled away because of the apathy. And again, I do believe that the intent of this was that that board would ultimately become who runs the whole place, and that it's self-sufficient, and like Mile Creek is making money. I kind of equate it to Clemson Paul Partners when they came in and said, here's what we're going to do, and here's our vision, and you know, we're going to be self-sustaining. You guys help us out. So I think these guys are the right guys to do the job.
Councilman Whitehurst.
Can I say I got scared feet? We've been burned before.
We heard.
We've got a bid document that I've never seen, that only one person qualified, who happened to be the person in the building, okay?
But I did.
And
Just let me point out on that we only had one responsive group. It wasn't that we eliminated anybody. I don't want there to be a misunderstanding about that.
Okay, well, you said you had some other people that inquired, but these are the ones that met the qualifications.
Well, they're the ones that, one of the qualifications is that they submitted their bid packet on time. They were the only ones that did that. But what we did have is several people express interest, but when the time came for the bid to be submitted, it was these guys who fortunately had experience in the facility.
So I guess, and nothing against you guys, I want to see a track record. You've done 8 shows, I'd like to know, okay, what was the problem?
How do they get a track record if they haven't even started running on the
But they
track
have,
yet?
they've been doing it.
And they've been doing shows.
I know, but
You're asking a circuitous questions, got no real answer.
No.
How do they show a track record if they've already been doing the work and they've not had the opportunity from support from us to do it? You're asking them, you're telling them they're going to fail because they haven't already succeeded. That doesn't make any sense. Call the vote.
All right,
Motion to
I got a
vote.
motion to call to vote. There's a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor of this coming out of committee recommending second reading, indicate by raising your hand. 4, all those opposed?
My
2,
issue is with the framework, not these guys.
4, 2, it carried. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I apologize.
I want to know what they've done.
You had plenty of time to ask all those questions, man. You just grandstanding now.
All right, we'll move on to log item 134, mental
Thank you,
health.
guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Log item number 134, and I apologize, I need to get up and get the machine again. This is just a quick update. I won't take up too much time. This is just a quick update on something that you all talked about being a problem and staff's had as a problem here in Pickens County, because Pickens County has the distinction, the dubious distinction, of leading the state of South Carolina in per capita suicide rate. And it's something we formed an ad hoc committee on a little over a year ago to try to begin figuring out a way to combat it. And I just wanted to update y'all. I don't need any action tonight. I don't want to go too far down a road without y'all knowing that I'm going down this road. So what I wanted to update you on is that the opportunity that's presented itself is through the Veterans Affairs Office. Our Veterans Affairs Officer, Sherry Harris, invited the state Veterans Affairs Secretary, he's a retired Major General Grimsley, who's the VA Secretary, and he came to Pickens County, and we spent some time with him. Sherry did a good job of getting him here. I showed him around the building and took the opportunity to meet with him and to talk to General Grimsley about specific things in Pickens County, and one of the things I talked to him about was our high incident of suicide. We talked a few times after that. General Grimsley really took an individual attention into our problem. Sherry Harris applied for a process through General Grimsley that would bring us some assistance, and we've started that process. And I just want to let you know that there's no financial commitment on the part of the county, but this is a federal program that Pickens County has been approved to participate in that's aimed at veterans and the families of veterans. And what it would do is it would look at what we have, what we provide to our veterans and their families, and what we should provide. So it would look at what behavioral health is doing, Prisma Hospital is doing, the Pickens County Sheriff's Office is doing, Pickens County is doing. It would look at us as a county-wide and determine what our current system is and what our current ideal system would be. The idea here, from my point of view, is this is going to give us a good map forward, and it will allow us to have the data and the due diligence so we can start applying for some grant funding for this process. So it's a good opportunity for us, and I'll tell you that we're excited because there are only 10 locations, 10 counties throughout the United States that were approved to participate in this, and Pickens County was one of the 10. Including New York, Queensboro, New York is one of the 10. Peoria, Illinois, Suffolk, Virginia, Baker County, Florida, which is right next to Jacksonville, El Paso County. And you'll see that they're down deciding between, this federal organization is down deciding between Manor, Texas and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for the last one. But Pickens County, gentleman, has its seat at the table for this mapping program. It's going to map the way that we intervene when there is a suicide concern, a veteran or a veteran's family. So it's just going to be data we're able to gather, data we're able to bring back to you. But in case you heard about it, because this is no small deal that we were approved, I wanted you to know that we're going down this road as an extension of what we were doing with our ad hoc suicide prevention. So we'll see. It's going to be several months this process is going to take. There'll be a product that's produced at the end of it. We would anticipate that coming in the summer, and we'll bring that product back to y'all and then try to leverage that for some funding for our local entities that try to address suicide situations. So I just wanted to give you that quick briefing, so this would not, when I came back to you in 6 months, this would not be something that caught you completely off guard, but instead would be something that you knew we were headed, a road we were headed down.
Any action you need from council at this time?
None, just wanted you to be aware.
All right, any questions on that, gentlemen? We'll move on to log item 164, shred truck options.
Gentlemen, on shred truck options, this is something that I felt like I could make a simple decision on, a relatively simple decision, which is to keep doing what the county's been doing. But I wanted to talk to you all about the larger policy. And if you were willing to have the conversation for 10 or 15 minutes, I think it would do me a great deal of good, because it's a policy level decision. Like I said, it would be easy enough for me to just say, okay, we're going to keep doing the program. But I want this to be something y'all are behind, or y'all decide not to be behind. So the situation is that our shred truck, which has now got a good many years on, needs extensive repairs. It needs the motor to be rebuilt. It needs the actual shredding mechanism, the core of the machine to be rebuilt. We got an estimate, which I think you have in your packet, that would be around $36,000 to completely rebuild the machine, the motor for the truck and the grinding machine. We, for years, have done at no charge the shredding for ourselves, some of the municipalities, the school district, or anyone that would bring their shredding to the main landfill. 5 days, 6 days a week, I guess. If they bring it there, we would do the shredding. What we've discovered over time is the easy and free availability of the shredding meant, and I'm going to admit this to you, exactly what I do in my office. Everything goes in the shred bin because there's no cost to it. Everything. All this stuff would go in the shred bin. What's sensitive here? Probably nothing, right? But so we've spent a lot of manpower and a lot of time doing a lot of shredding. Now, there used to be some market for shredded paper. It was a small market, but this was a service we provided. The reason I wanted to bring this up is that we looked at it and we think we can actually rent the shred truck for our needs for much cheaper than repairing the shred truck. But I don't want to cut that service out to everyone unless you all agree that's the best path forward. It's a relatively inexpensive thing to have shredding done. It's a matter of convenience. We looked at some of our neighboring counties, Greenville, Anderson, and Oconee, checked with them to see what they do. This is not a service that's provided in Greenville, in Anderson, or in Oconee. This is not seen in those counties as something that would be a daily core function of government. That having been said, they do all try to provide a shred day twice a year, once a year, where people can bring in their sensitive documents. What they believe, and what our staff actually believes as well, is that if we made it limited, the number of stuff that you would accumulate your shredding for the year and you'd go to that shred day. With the regular paper, you would try to recycle the paper. The reason I bring that up is really more philosophical, and it might be something you want to talk about in your work session on Saturday. This is a chart that shows our similar-sized counties. The Tier 2, according to the Association of Counties, the folks between 200,000 and 100,000 in population. And I added in Lancaster because they're almost to 100,000. And I added in Oconee because they're our neighbors. It seems to me, looking at these numbers, and again, this may be broader, but I wanted to put the shred truck in this context. You'll see that we have about 125,000 people, and we have a budget, general fund budget of about $47 million. Our payroll is about 25.5, and we have 549 full-time employees. You'll see how that relates to the next largest county, Florence, who is, a negligible amount bigger than us. $63 million general fund budget, $33 million payroll, and 922 employees. Okay, you just look at that and you start seeing how, over time, this council and its predecessors have made decisions about limited government. But to go in the other direction, you can see that Sumter, which is significantly smaller than us, has a larger general fund budget and almost as many employees. Lancaster, which is, again, a slight amount smaller than us, has a $60 million general fund budget, $26 million in payroll, and basically the same number of employees we have. And then Oconee, our neighbors just to the west, 78,000 people, a larger general fund budget than us, almost as much payroll, and basically the same number of employees. We are an extremely lean governmental entity. And perhaps I'm overselling it for a decision like the shred truck, but I wanted to put a frame about it because it seems to me that it fits with decisions that this council is forced to make about having 71 hours of recycling service a week as opposed to 48 to our neighbors around us. It speaks to decisions like that, and I don't feel like, I'm going to be frank about this, I don't feel like staff has done a good job of explaining this to the public and to you, the policymakers. We, as a county staff, have very limited resources compared to our similar-sized county. we're happy to do these services because we have buy-in. I think y'all know our finance director well enough to know this. We have buy-in on limited government and pinching a penny. That's not a problem the staff has. But before we spend $36,000 to fix a machine that actually loses us money, I wanted to make sure that y'all see it as a core function of government, because you gentlemen, the 6 of you, are the ones that make that kind of policy decision. So I hope I'm laying that out in a neutral way, because if you see it as a core function of government, we're ready to get busy on it. But it also seemed to me, and I got a little bit of conviction about, we need to be letting council know these things instead of just flopping a budget book down on their desk every March. So I offer that to you for whatever discussion you would like. Our recommendation is to not repair the shred truck, to provide some free shred days for folks, to contract out our own shred needs, and let the private industry handle this type of thing.
I have a question. What would a new shred truck cost, and what would be its life compared to rebuilding the other truck?
A new shred truck would be obviously significantly more. We haven't priced one out, but I think it would clearly be a 4-digit item. We're talking about over $100,000, $200,000. We haven't priced one out yet because we have one, and we just wanted to talk to y'all about the repair cost.
Mr. Chairman,
Wilson?
I'm completely unfamiliar with any organization of scale having their own means of doing this. All the Fortune 50 companies that I've worked for in the upstate, plus the military, would hire a company that would carry the liability of the material not being properly addressed, and having that sort of a standard across the industry for how they would shred the material and whatnot. I mean, I can't even understand why we're doing it. What's the thinking behind why we're doing it ourselves versus just hiring a service that specializes in this?
I think, and there's a little bit of this is kind of corporate memory here, okay? Institutional memory that I have just heard.
Right.
But this was a program that we started, I think, through some grant funding and everything, 10 or 15 years ago. It was during Chap Hurst's administration that we started this.
And part of that, the return on investment there was the business case was that there was a demand for that type of material.
There was a
at the time.
larger demand then. I don't think it was ever intended to be a break even. I think it was intended to be a service, so I don't want to oversell that part of it. It's just that there's a significant cost here, and I felt like you all as the policymakers needed to have a say.
So this is something, there's folks out there in the private sector, they do this type of work. They probably have an economy of scale that we don't have. And from a core function where we're talking about security and development and opportunity for the community, I mean, that doesn't seem to me like it falls in any of that.
I agree with Councilman Wilson. I'd like us to move forward on this recommendation from.
Can I ask one question?
Councilman.
Are we saving anything by taking this out of what we have to haul away? I mean, any tonnage, has any?
Whether it's shredded or not shredded, I don't, it's going to be paper. We're going to stack it up and try to find somebody to place it.
Removal of that.
That's right, some way or the
So
other.
there's no savings in the fact that we're.
It's a
taking it,
service we're providing.
But what do you,
regurgitating it and shipping out at a different
You
form.
might compact it a little tighter.
But the cost is the same, so we're not gaining anything.
but what are you shredding? I think you gain something if you have like HR documents or pieces of personal information or whatnot from employees. I mean, why would you shred everything? The only, like all this stuff's open to the public, right, that you've given us, right? It's all.
That's right,
Well,
but
all
so it becomes, this is human nature.
Well,
Human nature is
said
you
there
say, shred it all.
You said there was a market for it.
Right.
Okay, but a minimal market. So I was thinking, well, we're taking stuff, shredding it and selling it like we do in the other recycle, and maybe we're making a little bit, but we're also taking out what we don't have to pay to have shipped away.
Right, and I don't
You're
have
telling me
the,
those numbers are pretty insignificant.
that's right, that's right. But I need to say this because y'all are hastening to a decision here, and I want to make sure it's a knowing decision. This is a popular program. People like that we do this.
But which people? The people within the,
Well, the other governments that we do the service for free, the other municipalities and the school district, they love that we do this because it's free. You just need to know that there are going to be some people.
we give
that
people a whole lot of stuff for free here at the county that we probably shouldn't to begin with. That's not a core function of government to give away stuff, is it?
Depends on who you ask.
I was going to say, there's a reason a recycle center hours are what they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, true.
People have different opinions on that one, right?
Yeah, but do we, just my opinion, the services we provide, the EMT and the sheriff's department and, the roads work that we do and ditch work that we do, there's a function there where you really can't hand out police work to an outside entity that's, professionally bound to do that type of work within a certain structure. It seems to me that shred and junk is right up the alley of the 10 companies that you can call and get to come do it.
Right.
I just say we inform the municipalities and people in some form that, our shred truck has ended its life, and that we, at this point, not, if we decide to go that way, kind of informing them in some way that we're not going to move forward with this thing, so that they're at least got a heads up as opposed to.
Proactive communication. Any other discussion or question?
You have a motion.
Do you need a motion? I feel like you'd feel more comfortable if we actually got behind this, or are you comfortable with just going purely off conversation?
Motion to accept the staff's recommendation to discontinue services and communicate it widely throughout the community.
Motion by Councilman Wilson,
Second.
second by Vice Chairman Costner. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand.
Thank you,
It's
gentlemen.
unanimous. Thank you. All right, and our last item tonight is our E911 update, our 6-month status report. So I will yield the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my pleasure to be able to actually present this report for the first time under my new duties. As you well know, the 911 system is the first link in the chain for our emergency services. People ask what emergency services does for our citizens, and very simply, from the time they pick up the phone and dial until the patient's delivered to the hospital, the bad guy arrives at the jail, or the fire's put out. We handle everything from beginning to end. We do have our team with us tonight: Richard Crow, who is our E911 director, Megan Burgess, who is our 911 data specialist and also handles our training, and then Lisa Castle, Pickens County Sheriff's Office communication coordinator. So everybody works together to make sure that everything works when our citizens need that. I'm going the right way there, boss. Oh, that's right. We had the right-of-way discussion there. I'm not sure if you have a copy of this in front of you or not, but this is just beginning, just a little bit about what we do. For this report will be July 2020 until the end of the year, till the end of December 2020. Our current staffing, we have 17, and there it goes, come on. 17 of our current communication specialists are currently emergency medical dispatch trained. We have 2 registered for the upcoming class, and we have 3 that are just beginning with us. And we try to get them through the in-house training, make sure that they're going to stay with us before we make that investment, and make sure that they have what it takes to get us what we need from them as employees. And it's a very intensive process. It's about $419 per person to take them through the EMD training. So we want to make sure that we're spending our training dollars wisely and investing in folks that are going to stick with us for a little while. These are our scores, again, from July 2020 to the end of December 2020, scored on a 100% scale. And as you see there, we've got pretty good numbers. Our average is about 97.52 for that. We did actually have some 100s in there through the scoring process, and I have a slide coming up through there. Most of those that were in the hundreds were our more intensive type calls, where the dispatcher, the communication specialist, actually had to stay on the phone throughout that call to make sure that we were feeding every bit of information that we possibly could to our folks in the field. So you can see that our folks do a good job. Our current staffing, we run 4 folks during the day, 4 folks at night. That's, of course, when we have everybody there, nobody's out sick, nobody's out for vacation. So knowing the number of calls that come in, and we're going to see those numbers here coming up. This is the one about the 100. Some of those were over 4 to 6 minutes, where we were actually staying on the phone, communicating with our folks in the field and our folks on the 911. These are our call numbers. that were received through the month. And if you look at that, that's 25,000 calls that those communication specialists answered during the last 6 months of the year. Average is about 138 calls a day. For those of you, and I know Chairman Bowers will understand when I say this, emergency services in general, and especially our communication folks, can be hours of boredom interrupted by minutes of sheer terror, because that 138 calls a day is an average. You may have a pretty light day. Everybody stayed home that day. Everybody behaved themselves. Nobody was out cutting trees, burning brush, and things like that. They're going to get them hurt. But then we have a weekend like we had this past weekend. Folks are out burning brush. They're out doing yard work. They're getting hurt. They're letting fires get away from them. All those things that these folks now have to handle. These are 911 call times. If you look at the National Emergency Number Association, we know it as NENA, and I think I have a slide coming up with that one as well. Everything should be answered in less than 10 seconds. If you look at anything up there outside of the blue and the green, we have a very small sliver of the pie there where it took more than 30 seconds. We didn't have any calls that took for more than 30 seconds for that phone to ring, and our folks pick up and say, 911, what's the location of your emergency, and get the chain of survival going. So again, I think our folks do a great job in getting that taken care of. And of course, this is our standard. 90% of the time, they must arrive, when they're arriving at the PSAP, the public safety answering point, must be answered within 15 seconds, and 95% should be within 20 seconds. So we're meeting that standard. What that tells me is we've got good folks working for us, because our staffing level has remained pretty flat. I was gone from the county, as I affectionately call it, my days in Egyptian captivity, when I was a county south of here. When I left for there, the staffing was pretty much the same. And so now here we are about 13 years later, and our staffing is pretty much the same it was then. When you look at the population, the number of calls that continue to come into our 911 center, our folks are great at making sure that they're up to the challenge. Again, 4 employees per shift, this is what they handle. EMS, 911, sheriff channels, fire channels are the fire channels we have, and Lisa, keep me honest on this, 3 or 4 fire channels that y'all have to monitor, because they don't just handle rural fire. They handle city of Pickens, 6 Mile, and also the city of Easley. They actually dispatch calls that come in through the 911 center here. They direct dispatch to the city of Easley. Even though the city of Easley has their own PSAP, if you call 911 from the city of Easley, they'll pick it up, they'll dispatch it, but if you're out in the contract area outside the city limits of Easley, it comes to these folks and they direct dispatch that out. And again, a team concept, and I'm going to speak for Lisa, she may kill me for saying it, you're quite welcome to come and watch them operate. I think you'd really be amazed at exactly what they do. And of course, that all is the team concept from Richard's standpoint of making sure the equipment's there, it's working properly, it's the latest and greatest, and keeping it up to date to make sure our folks are properly trained, and then making sure that we maintain that training and keep a good quality product coming. People don't think about that 911 because it's not tangible a lot of times. But if you're the one that needs the help on the other end, you're needing the ambulance, you're needing EMS, you're needing the fire department, it becomes quite a tangible product. This is just a quick synopsis of the training track, 5 to 6 months of in-house training, and again, that's to get folks acclimated. During that point in time, they'll rotate through several different consoles, several different roles, from 911 call taker, emergency medical, fire, and on the sheriff's office, and they're learning the system. From there, 1 week of 911 school through the South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy, and then from there, there's SLED and NCIC certification. CPR certification is required through EMD. One of the things that EMD seeks to do is to get medical attention out to the field even while EMS and fire are responding. If you're not familiar with that EMD, and it's going through some revamp even now as we speak, there are questions that they're going to ask. Are they breathing? Do you know CPR? The answer is no. Can I walk you through it? Can I tell you how to do that? And sometimes the caller doesn't feel comfortable. We completely understand that. But by the same token, if they do, that 911 dispatcher can give them direction and possibly make a difference between life and death, especially if we have a witnessed arrest, and we can start getting perfusion through the body until EMS can arrive and take over. And then our EMD certification process, which again is it's a little pricey, but it's a good product, and we get a good dispatcher, good communications folks out of it. And I'm not gonna call for the German, it's not my job. And I'll open that, even though I'm probably like you, but I'll open it up to any questions, gentlemen.
Absolutely. One of the first things we talked about when we were talking about doing this, and Vice Chairman Costner, you'll remember the conversation, utilization of resources. Now, you are our emergency services director, which means while the dispatchers work for the sheriff, those are your resources. Have we seen, and I'm not talking about a field, have we been able to see a better utilization of our resources? Are we sending less fire engines out to calls they shouldn't go to? Not because the fire chief don't want to, but because EMD is working.
I can't really speak to that because I'm just kind of getting my arms around it as myself, to be quite honest with you. But I do know the questions are being asked. And it's like anything else with data. You get trash in, sometimes you get trash out. Maybe that's a bad analogy. No, but when the dispatch, the communications folks are asking the questions, we get a lot of, well, I don't know. And cell phones are great, but they can also be a curse when it comes to emergency services because somebody passes a little bump up. Hey, there's a wreck out here, and they'll call in, doing the right thing. They want to call in, and the communication specialist will say, anybody hurt? Well, I don't really know. So they're going to base that on that initial information. The good thing is, eventually, one of the parties involved will usually call in, and they'll say, well, there's nobody hurt. The communication specialists are very good about telling us that. So long answer to your short question, yes, we are being able to see that a lot more because they're getting further information once the call is started and able to cancel our folks en route.
Before I yield the floor, one thing I would like because we have it, and as long as you gentlemen agree, every 6 months, because this is something new. This is something that we've been doing. I guess this is the second or third update. Third update. So, it's a learning. It's something we're all learning, right?
Myself included.
Yourself included. Number of incidents versus number of actual 911 calls. Because of what you just said, people picking up the cell phone, et cetera, because you are getting overwhelmed. I'm not naive to the fact you get overwhelmed, you get 5 calls for the exact same wreck. So how many incidents are we actually talking about? If you would work on that data for next time, it would be awesome. Vice Chairman Costa.
I just wanted to say, from the beginning of this, and you guys will know because I was asking the questions, I had a bump up and it was everybody in the county seemed to come running. Why are we doing that? Fire truck, police, and I'm just saying in the past this has happened. And I remember talking to you last time about, hey, I made a call and never got anybody, and you checked into all that. So, I want to commend you for the work that you guys are doing so far. The question that I have is, what do you need from us?
I'll be honest with you, personnel, and we know in a lean budget, Mr. Roper just presented, we're pretty much a lean, mean fighting machine when it comes to our budget. With this county does a great job being fiscally responsible. I think we do great. But we could easily put 2 more dispatchers per shift and keep them busy. And I don't mean that to find something for them to do. There are those days, and especially, and we hit a lull in the first months of the pandemic because everybody was staying home. Since then, we're paying the piper. Calls are up because of COVID and other things. Our population continues to grow. We're going to see more calls for service. It would allow us to more. I don't like to use the word compartmentalize, but specialize our folks a little bit better. And this is no slight toward the communication staff, but on an emergency medical call right now, that EMT, that paramedic that's responding, may hear the voice of 4 different dispatchers on the same call. We would be able to more specialize to where, I'm going to use Lisa because she's here. If she takes that call, she handles it from beginning to end. She's taking every bit of that information. Even if it's Mr. Roper's the other dispatcher, he transfers that information to her. He's not the one giving it out because, as you well know, the old grapevine game, it loses something in the translation. So if he's able to completely give her information, she stays with that call consistently.
So for the benefit of Councilman Wilson and Councilman Seda, can you kind of explain a little bit to them on dispatch? It's not like I'm watching 911 and it's all in one location. It's all over the place, right?
Yes, sir. We actually have, and I'm gonna make sure that they keep me honest. We have 3 PSAPs in the county. The main one being here at the sheriff's office. There's one at Easley Police Department. There's one at Clemson. Depending on, yes, University. I'm sorry, not City of Clemson University. Depending on where you are and where you call from, it's going to hit a tower, and that tower is going to send you wherever. It's a landline. It's going to pick it up. If it's in the city of Easley, it's going to send it to Easley. If you're outside the county, it's going to come to the sheriff's office. So where that call comes from sets the tone from that very beginning. And then Richard and I were talking, and I know that Lisa will remember when we first got our 911 system, we went around on Saturdays and made test calls for a month, I guess, to make sure that it was working. And the information came up on a little bitty call screen that basically gave a name and an address, and that was it. Now with the computer-aided dispatch, once they start taking in information, it constantly upgrades. The EMS units have mobile data, and it constantly brings up those updates. Not breathing, gun involved, anything like that. That comes up so that our folks are as well informed as they possibly can be when they pull up on scene, be it fire, EMS, or law enforcement. It's not like on 911 where it's nice and clean, where you see a Chicago fire or something like that. Yeah, everybody knows a lot of sensationalism there. But our folks stay with those callers and get as much information as they possibly can and relay it to the field so that, again, they're as well informed as we possibly can, given the most up-to-date information through that. It's a lot of interworkings, though. Not too long ago, I was speaking to the American Legion Post down in Easley. The commander at the time worked for Southern Bell. That's how it's been. They are Bell South. They put in the original 911 equipment. And so somebody said, all right, now tell me how this works. And I said, I'm going to refer you to this gentleman here because he knew all the nuts and bolts of it. I know how you pick up, how it goes in, how they take the information and disseminate it out. So again, it's a lot of interworking parts that takes all of us working together, from Richard when something goes down and he sends me a text, headed to the office, 911 lines went down. And, usually within a few minutes, got them back up and running. So again, all these people working together make it work so when our customer picks up that phone and it starts pinging wherever they are, from cell phone or landline or what have you, they take the information, they disseminate out to the field. Does that kind of cover the gamut?
Yeah, I just know that
Councilman Waters.
I commend you. You've done an excellent job. This was an issue several years ago. And I'm going on a jogged memory here on this. It seems like there was an issue we had with all the calls that go to the sheriff's office going to the 911 number.
No, I think what you're referring to, the administrative lines were the issue, yeah.
If we got that resolved,
There's a 898-5500 call line that's a non-emergent line that goes to the sheriff's office. Because it's been published for so long, it's a catch-all. And I think Lisa will hear me out on that. What are the visiting hours at the jail? I need to talk to somebody about my dog barking, or my dog. So that number is still there. That 5500 is still out there, and it is used quite a bit because it is a catch-all. As far as the being able to resolve it completely, the use of the 211 was something that could possibly work. That's going to take a learning curve. It'll take some PSAs to get some folks out there that you can call this number and find out about dogs barking and things like that. But as you well know, for those of you that have been born and raised here, some of you that got here fortunately as quick as you could, some of those old habits die hard. They're going to dial 898-5500.
I just know, you've got a lead staff, and you got emergencies you're dealing with,
Yes, sir.
and then you get a call in there where it's about something, and I know we've talked about it for a long time, and it just blows my mind.
It still happens, yes, sir.
You're still answering the calls for the sheriff's office for administration stuff?
Keep in mind that several of these employees at the E911 center are sheriff's office employees.
I get that, but
So
The only benefit to that is the person that's answering those administrative lines is also sitting in the room where their 911 calls come in, so they're also helping with those 911 calls. If they were somewhere else, then that would be one less person that was answering those 911 calls. The administrative line can be put on hold as you see in the call answer times. That's being done, they're leaving. But you didn't have that person in there, I mean, it's multi-purpose for that person.
And I do think that was part of it, and they are taxed because the number of administrative calls that come in, non-911 calls, whatever you want to say, on that non-emergent line is taxing to those 4 people. But I agree, I mean, your numbers look great for your call time, and that was the big concern initially.
Well, see, the call numbers aren't gonna go down, our population's gonna grow. And so it's gonna be an ongoing thing, and I feel like it's gotta be some kind of solution. At some point, we can separate that, and I don't know, because it's not, but.
So I'm still confused. So I don't know if I don't know this number. I don't know why. If I have an emergency, I call 911. Why wouldn't, if I have an emergency, I call 911 and the other number goes to the sheriff's office or somebody in an administrative capacity?
Well, and we had discussed that, one possible option, again, this would be completely at the discretion of the sheriff, is if you had a desk officer on duty that would handle walk-in complaints and do nothing but handle that 5,500. I don't know how many people that would take, because again, that phone rings a bunch. It rings a lot, especially during
But it is
daytime.
the sheriff's office and not 911.
Sir, I'm sorry.
It is the sheriff's office and not
It is
911.
their administrative line, it is, yes, sir.
But under our,
Answering the sheriff's calls for his administrative office.
but under our form of government, in this case, 911 dispatchers, phone, whatever, is currently under the sheriff.
is. Yes,
So
sir.
that is what it is.
Well,
Under
that
that
would be an
form.
issue that I would be looking to resolve, because it's not gonna get better.
Well, it's not going to get better. You're absolutely right. But I do commend and thank, and your numbers are phenomenal. I've actually heard great things. I mean, it's no secret. I talk to people in the medical field on the regular, and they're actually excited. I've heard that there's some rewrite, new EMD cards and standards and stuff, and they're excited about that, which has been huge. And as a paramedic, I will say, it's great knowing what you're getting into before you get there. I'll just say it like that. So, Mr. Finger, Councilman.
Yeah, on December 25th, it was just about dark. I was on my way home to Clemson, went through Easley, and noticed this old car that kept pulling up behind people, and then after a while, he would go and take off and move on down and get behind somebody else. Anyway, we got out between Easley and Liberty, and I came up behind this guy again, and there were a whole bunch of cars. I was in the left lane. The guy that was kept getting behind people was in the left lane behind another vehicle, and the other vehicle kept slowing down, and the people around me kept passing me, so I passed the 2 of them. About the time I got even with the vehicle in front, I hear this thumping noise and the car shook. The person had tried to get in my lane because she could not see because of the bright lights in the car. Here's where I probably did the wrong thing. I didn't think to call 911. I knew I had the sheriff's department number in my phone, so I called the sheriff's department, and within about 2 minutes, there was an ambulance there, but neither one of the people in the cars were hurt, and of course we told them to go on, and we waited and waited 45 minutes. Finally, a highway patrol person came, and I took the information, and we went on home. I did not realize that there could be that long a wait just to get the highway patrol.
Yes, sir. And it being Christmas and then being shorthanded, that actually happens quite more frequently than most people would realize, because the highway patrol is shorthanded, just like just about everybody else. So I'm glad nobody was hurt, but I'm glad our folks were right on top of you too, in case somebody was hurt. And of course, the highway patrol, they prioritize according to injuries, and if no injuries, it kind of gets pushed up to the back behind them with injuries. So.
Mr. Roper?
Yeah, I just. Oh, no, I didn't do that. Good. I wanted to point out to Mr. Whitehurst's point, because it's something that I have thought for several months in the position that I'm in, this is going to be a challenge going forward. We are going to grow. We need to start thinking about, is this the most efficient way? The sheriff has dispatchers, but should the sheriff be dispatching for fire, for EMS, those sorts of things? We've got to look at that with an open mind. In that regard, I've been trying to educate myself a little bit about it. I'm actually taking some training through NACO, through the National Association of Counties, this Wednesday afternoon on 911 systems. And the emergency services folks have been nice enough to loan me a radio. My wife accuses me of being an old dude that listens to the scanner now. But I wanted to suggest to you, gentlemen, you could tonight make a motion to 10-7 once you're done with this, because I'm learning the 10 codes. But
We'll go 1042.
1042, thank you.
Any other questions for anyone?
And I would invite members of council to please get with Lisa if you'd like to come and tour the center. Any time that I can help you, please know that I'm available. Richard he's the guru. He's the one that's schooling me on the nuts and bolts of how it works, and then from there, how we trade, and then actually how it works inside that center. Because even though I've been a hose jockey for 30 some odd years, you have to be reminded sometimes that information comes to you from somewhere. It starts with our customer, and it has to make it our way through a conduit, and these folks in the communication center are that conduit.
So do we call 911 or 5500 to set that up?
I'm sorry. If you need some help, call 911 if it's an emergency. 5500 if you want to know about dogs barking or what time visiting hours are at the jail.
Set up an appointment, we'll call that. All right.
Yes, sir. Call Lisa. She can get.
Absolutely, and I just want to reiterate that, everybody, y'all are welcome. I'd love for you to come and see how everything's set up, sit in for a little while, just to find out more about how it works.
Put a headset on you and really find out how it works.
You're just putting us to work is what you're doing.
You gotta get free labor where you can, Mr. Costa.
Pull all their numbers up and get on the phone.
That's it. Any other questions or discussion?
Everyone that reaches out to always call 911, that's probably separating the two. If you have this in the entrance, 5500, a lot of emergency calls come in on 5500. Everybody wants to call 911, that's an issue of separating the two. And just something.
Understood. Any other questions or discussion? It's 8:05. That's all we have on the agenda for tonight.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Councilman Wilson.
Second.
Second by Vice Chairman Costner. All those in favor?
Aye.
And we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to